What's up, guys? How are you? Welcome to the first video of this week. We are looking at a new text today, and that is Woods Runner by Gary Paulson. For those of you who turned in yesterday's work, you guys have already taken a look at chapter 1. You guys did some pre-reading for me yesterday. And I hope that you guys liked that first chapter. And today I do want to talk about it, and you guys are going to be revisiting chapter 1, except with a different focus on it. And I'm going to read part of it to you because The Woods Runner is written by Gary Paulson. Gary Paulson is the same author of Hatchet, which we read earlier this year in our last module. And Gary Paulson does a really great job at all times of giving you a lot of sensory details about settings and locations, and like what's going on with the characters and how they are reacting. So a lot of that can be overwhelming. He uses some larger vocabulary words, which I'm going to be tracking for you guys as we go forward, and we'll go over some of them today. But I also wanted to read with you today the contents, which sounds weird to do, but it wasn't included in the PDF. And there's also an author's note that I want to read with you guys as well, before we get into some of actual chapter 1 and the work you guys are doing with chapter 1 today. But before that even, I want to take a look at our chart for this afternoon and say that this is lesson 21, part 1, and we have a new focus question. And this focus question kind of goes back into the idea of perspective and motivations of why people were doing certain things based off of their perspectives. And the focus question is, what drove the Patriots to fight for independence? So again, we are looking at the American Revolution, but mostly from a patriotic point of view. And if you guys read chapter 1, you should realize by now that Samuel is on the patriot side of the American Revolution, okay? And then our content framing question for today is, what do you notice and wonder about Woods Runner? And no, we're not going to be doing a regular notice wonder chart today for chapter 1, because you guys have already looked at chapter 1. We're going to be doing a little bit read, notice, wonder, think, all that stuff tomorrow for chapters 2 and 3, because those are a little bit shorter for you. So I didn't want to kill you guys with too much reading, especially if we hadn't been talking about it. So today we're still focusing on chapter 1 and Woods Runner. Again, we have historical fiction. This is still taking place during the time of the Revolutionary War, and there's historical tidbits mixed in to the story of Samuel, okay? And so I wrote here historical context, as we know that context just kind of means background. So some background information about this text that you might not have gotten just from reading chapter 1. This story takes place after the Boston Tea Party, but before the Battle of Brandywine Creek, which means that if we were going to put the texts that we've read so far in order, like a timeline, the first one you would have read is Colonial Voices, then you'd be reading Woods Runner, and then the last one you'd be reading is The Scarlet Stocking Spy. So those are the historical timeline of these texts that we have read, okay? Now, Woods Runner has 3 parts. Part 1 is Green, the Forest, 1776. And so the date 1776 falls right in line of between Colonial Voices and The Scarlet Stocking Spy. And that's the part we're working on now. It's a shorter part of the book, but the way that Gary Paulson structures this text is very specific, and just based on the colors, you can kind of make out what's happening in each one of these sections. The second part is Red and War, and again, we're still in 1776. And then part 3 is Green, New York, 1776. So you go from green to red to green. That's a very interesting kind of setup, okay? I'm going to read the author's note now, and then we'll go over some more of the content and the parts of the story, okay? So, author's note from Gary Paulson himself. I've written this book a bit differently from my other historical fiction, alternating the fiction with historical segments that I feel are essential for the reader. I did this for two reasons. One, I wanted to tell Samuel's story against the larger context of the Revolutionary War. So basically he goes back and forth, weaves in and out of the historical part of the text and the fictional part of the text. And he thinks that by doing that, he's going to help tell Samuel's story better. And a lot of the things that Samuel is doing are based on the fact that the Revolutionary War is such this big topic and this big overarching idea. And two, I wanted readers to understand what it was really like to live on the frontier at the time. And with virtually nothing, no money, no electricity, no towns, few neighbors, nothing but your own strength. So the frontier has the word front in it, and we're actually doing a little bit more with frontier tomorrow, but frontier means just at the very edge of civilization, basically, okay? And you don't have many resources, and you don't have the stores and stuff like that like they would in the other two texts that we've read. So that's what makes this a little bit different. I think that's also kind of, wink wink, what plays into the green and the forest and everything else, okay? So the contents here, the part one, the green, is chapters 1, 2, and 3, so we're going to be doing that over the next 2 days. Then after that, part 2 is the red part, and that's chapters 4 all the way through chapter 11, so we're in that section for a long time. And then the last green section is chapter 12 all the way to chapter 19. So with 19 chapters, we're definitely going to be taking a look at Woods Runner for a very long time, okay? So today your focus is going to be on levels of understanding. And levels of understanding is something that's created in order to help you ask questions, because you guys can't understand necessarily what's happening on, what's going on, and what's happening in the text if you're not asking questions on your own. Today I'm going to ask you guys to reread chapter 1, some of which I'm going to read to you now. But as you read today, you're going to be looking at the Google document that I created for you, and you are going to be asking 2 questions for each level of understanding, okay? So the first level of understanding is organize. And if you can't see this, I'll post a picture of it, don't worry. Is organize. And these are strictly questions about what's happening in the text. It could be, why is Samuel doing this? Or why does he decide to go there? Whatever. Questions like that. Why does he have this with him? Whatever's on your mind about the text itself. The second level of understanding is reveal. So reveal. What are you trying to find? What questions about what things mean? You're trying to find the meaning. You're trying to reveal the meaning of things that are happening in the text. Now, does that mean if you find a word that you're not familiar with to say, what does this word mean? No. Okay? We're looking for the deeper meaning. You're looking to dig deep into the text to try to figure out what that could mean for Samuel down the line. Or how is this going to affect Samuel? Okay? Those are the kinds of questions I mean. The third type of understanding is distill. Okay? So those are going to be questions about the theme or central message, the bigger picture. Okay? Theme is often, what we learn or what the author wants us to learn. So you're going to be kind of looking for things that Samuel is learning along the way that you think could be part of the overall theme of the text. It's kind of like asking questions about the theme of the section that you're reading. And then the last level of understanding is the know level of understanding, not N-O, K-N-O-W, like what you yourself know. And the know level is actually really interesting because it requires you to kind of go a little bit further in what you're thinking in your own brain, okay? Because the know level of understanding is questions that you have about the world based on what you've read in the text, okay? So obviously, as you guys are reading this, you're going to be learning things. And the know level is asking you to take what you've learned from reading Woods Runner and ask questions about the world. And by the world, we mean the bigger topic. And in this situation, we're talking about the American Revolution, okay? So based on what you're learning here, what questions do you have about the revolution in general, okay? And you can, ask questions as it might relate to another text that we've read, or just things that we have learned about the Revolutionary War in this entire module that you're like, oh wow, I wonder if this affects that, okay? So now, part 1, Green, the Forest, 1776. I'm going to read a couple pages of chapter 1, so if you guys want to open up your PDF and follow along, it would probably be a good idea. And like I told you guys, that the PDF is more pages than the actual book itself, because the PDF words are bigger, and you guys have 15 pages for chapter 1, which seems like so much, but in reality in the book it's only like 9 pages, so not that bad. Chapter 1. He was not sure exactly when he became a child of the forest. One day it seemed he was 11, playing in the dirt around the cabin or helping with chores, and the next he was 13, carrying a .40 caliber Pennsylvania flintlock rifle, wearing smoked buckskin clothing and moccasins, moving through the woods like a knife through water, while he tracked deer to bring home to the cabin for meat. So automatically in that first paragraph, we're seeing a big change in Samuel, and this story is being told by a narrator, okay? So this person is kind of getting into Samuel's brain. Samuel is not saying I or me or anything like that. Everything is he, and so that gives us our narrative perspective. He sat down by a game trail waiting for the deer he knew would soon come. He had heard it, a branch brushing a hairy hide, a twig crackling, smelled it with the wind blew towards him, the musk and urine of a buck. He checked the priming on his rifle while he waited, his mind and body relaxed, patient, ears and eyes and nose alert, quiet, every part of him at rest, yet focused and intense. And he pictured his life, how he lived in two worlds. Sometimes Samuel thought that a line dividing those worlds went right through their cabin, to the west. Beyond, the small parchment window made of grease-soaked sheepskin, scraped paper thin, lay in the forest. The forest was unimaginably vast, meaning that the forest just went on forever. Vast means very big and like large in scale. Impenetrable, mysterious, and dark. So he's letting you know that the forest seems huge and that there's a lot of mystery associated with it. His father had told him that a man could walk west for a month, walk as far and as fast as he could, and never see the sun, so high and dense in the canopy of leaves. So basically his dad told him, you can walk and walk and walk, and it's just going to be forest after forest after forest. And the canopy it's talking about is just, that's what they call the trees. The limbs of the trees kind of overlapping to form almost like a ceiling or a roof where you can't see the sun through the trees. Ever close to their homestead, 12 acres clawed out in the timber with a small log cabin and a lean-to for a barn. The forest was so thick that in summer Samuel could not see more than 10 or 15 yards into it. Some oak and elm and maple were 4 or 5 feet in diameter, and so tall and thickly foliaged their height could only be guessed. A wild world. And while there were trails made by game and sometimes used by native settlers or trappers, the paths wandered and meandered so that they were impossible to use in any sensible way except for to hunt. So basically, these woods are too hard to navigate. No one's going to be able to cut down these trees because they're so large to kind of, make housing developments in that area. So basically, it's exclusively used for hunting. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I'm running a little long on the video. You guys can read the rest of this on your own. And remember, you are asking questions that fit into each one of these categories. And I want at least 2 questions for each of the 4 categories, and you're gonna have a Rex response question for homework as well. Okay, I'm going to try to figure out the Google Meetings for us for tomorrow. I could not get our grid view today, and thank you for those of you who checked in. And I look forward to seeing you guys at 1:30. All right, I'll see you later. Make sure you're reading, make sure you're getting all this done and submitting. Please, I beg you. Not enough people are turning in work, so get on it. Bye.